Hi everyone! Here's our read aloud for the week. It's called Enemy Pie, and we have our teachers here ready with a paper and pen, hopefully, to start our interactive read aloud. And remember, boys and girls at home, you can always pause the video and do your stop and jots and stop and draws so that you are following along as we're doing our thinking too. So we're going to get started. But before we start our reading, I wanted to ask you guys, what do you guys think, what is an enemy? Does anyone know what an enemy is? You can give me a thumbs up when you're ready to share. Okay, Miss Rosales, do you want to share with us, what is an enemy?
Someone who is not your friend.
Ooh, that's a very good definition of enemy. So it's someone that's not really our friend. And we're going to read this story to figure out, why is this person not the main character's friend? And we'll see what happens. Okay, here we go.
Today, I'm going to read Enemy Pie, written by Derek Munson and illustrated by Tara Callahan King. It should have been a perfect summer. My dad helped me build a treehouse in the backyard. My sister was at camp for 3 whole weeks, and I was on the best baseball team in town. It should have been the perfect summer, but it wasn't. It was all good until Jeremy Ross moved into the neighborhood, right next door to my best friend, Stanley. I did not like Jeremy Ross. He laughed at me when he struck me out at the baseball game. He had a party on his trampoline. I wasn't even invited, but my best friend Stanley was. Jeremy Ross was the one and only person on my enemy list. I never even had an enemy list until he moved into the neighborhood. But as soon as he came along, I needed one. I hung it up in my treehouse, where Jeremy Ross was not allowed to go.
I'll pause right there and let's do a quick check-in and we'll stop and talk with one another. Why is Jeremy Ross his enemy? And give me a thumbs up when you've had some time to think about it, and we can share as a group why he was their enemy. Awesome. Ms. Akimowicz, do you want to start our discussion?
Sure. I think that Jeremy Ross was the main character's enemy, I forgot his name, because he wasn't inviting him to things that the main character wanted to be a part of. So like his birthday celebration, he wasn't invited, so that kind of made him feel left out. So maybe that's why he turned into his enemy.
Yeah, and I don't think the author really tells us who the character's name is, so we'll just refer to him as the boy. And I think you made a good point. Like, sometimes it's hard for us to really like people who don't include us in things or make us feel left out. Would anyone like to add on?
I agree, and would like to say that the boy is having such strong feelings about being isolated or being not included that it brought him to the point of creating this enemy list. Something in the story that was pointed out was the first time he had ever done. This is new to him.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. And I feel like this tells us a lot about how when we make people feel left out, how that makes other people feel, and the kind of friendship we don't get to have because we're not including everyone either. So let's continue to listen and read what happens next.
Dad understood stuff like enemies. He told me that when he was my age, he had enemies too. But he knew a good way to get rid of them. And I asked him to tell me how. Tell you how? I'll show you how, he said. And he pulled a really old recipe book off the kitchen shelf. And inside, there was a worn-out scrap of paper with faded writing. And Dad held it up and he squinted at it. Enemy pie, he said, satisfied. You may be wondering what exactly is in enemy pie. I was wondering too.
And I'm sure you're wondering too. So we're going to take some time to stop and draw. What would you put in your enemy pie? So go ahead, boys and girls and teachers, draw what you would put in your enemy pie. And remember, this enemy is someone that you don't really like. So what would you put in a pie for someone you don't really like? And teachers, when you're ready, you can go ahead and share your drawing of what you put in your enemy pie. Go ahead, Miss Kimowich, go ahead and share.
So in my enemy pie, I put some worms. There's worms in there. And then I have a label of what it says. It says mud to make it look like chocolate pie. And then worms and rocks.
Ooh, that's not very nice, Missy Kimowich.
I know.
But I love your idea of making it think that, oh, they're going to think it's chocolate pie, but it's actually mud.
Yep.
Very sneaky. How about you, Miss Kim?
Mine is has a lot of nice things like old socks, some garlic and jalapeno, spicy, spiders, warm.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a very savory pie.
For my enemy.
Yeah. How about you? Miss Rosalia,
Yeah.
So I just kept it to food still, and I figured some lettuce would be the crust part, peas would be the filling instead of Granny's green apples, and then instead of something sweet, it would be salty.
Oh, interesting. I feel like Miss Rosales, your pies doesn't sound that bad. You're so kind.
Oh.
Well, let's see what the boy or the dad puts into their pie.
But Dad said the recipe was so secret, he couldn't even tell me. I decided it must be magic, and I begged him to tell me something, anything. I'll tell you this, he said. Enemy pie is the fastest known way to get rid of enemies. Of course, that got my mind working. What kind of things, disgusting things, would I put into a pie for an enemy? I brought Dad some weeds from the garden, but he just shook his head. I brought him earthworms and rocks, but he didn't think he needed those. I gave him the gum that I'd been chewing on all morning. He gave it right back to me. I went out to play alone. I shot baskets until the ball got stuck up on the roof. I threw a boomerang, it never came back to me. And all the while, I listened to my dad chopping and stirring and blending the ingredients. Enemy pie. This could be a great summer after all. Enemy pie was going to be awful. I tried to imagine how horrible it must smell, or worse yet, what it was going to look like. When I was in the backyard looking for ladybugs, I smelled something really, really, really good. And as far as I could tell, it was coming from our kitchen. I was a bit confused. I went in to ask my dad what was wrong. Enemy pie shouldn't smell this good. But Dad was smart. If enemy pie smelled bad, your enemy would never eat it, he said. I could tell he had made enemy pie before. The buzzer rang, and Dad put on the oven mitts and pulled the pie out of the oven. It looked like plain old pie. It looked good enough to eat. I was catching on. But still, I wasn't really sure how this enemy pie worked. What exactly did it do to enemies? Maybe it made their hair fall out, or their breath stinky. Maybe it made bullies cry. I asked my dad, but he was no help. He wouldn't tell me a thing. But while the pie cooled, he filled me in on my job. He told me, there's one part of enemy pie that I can't do. And in order for it to work, you need to spend a day with your enemy. Even worse, you have to be nice to him. It's not easy, but that's the only way enemy pie can work.
I'm going to pause there for a second, and I want you to think, what do you think the boy is feeling right now? So I'm going to share a whiteboard, and I want you to do a stop, and it's called a draw jot. And what you're going to do is you're going to draw what you think, a cloud, what you think the boy is thinking at this point, and also what he might be feeling. So you can put a word in the cloud for what he's thinking and a word in the heart for what he's feeling. And I'll give you guys some time to draw that in your paper. And teachers, when you're ready, you can go ahead and share, and I'll write down what you guys think he's thinking and what he might be feeling. Miss Kim, would you like to start us off?
I think the boy is saying, I wonder what this enemy pie will taste like.
And then what do you think he's feeling?
Curious.
Curious. Any other thoughts?
I think the boy is thinking, why do I have to hang out with my enemy?
Nice. And what do you think he's feeling?
I think he's confused.
Confused. Really good sentence frames and feelings. Miss Rosales?
1 second.
Okay, no worries. Take your time.
Sorry, I wrote sentences here.
Oh, nice.
So I said, it's a sacrifice to stay all day and be nice to an enemy, but it will be all worth it. That is the thought. And then in the heart, I said, I hope he feels the same way he made me feel.
Ooh, so I feel like he's feeling this heart for like revenge, right? Like he really wants to make the enemy feel as bad as he did. So I'm gonna write like feelings of revenge in the heart.
Resentment.
Resentment, yeah, I like that too. Resentment. Okay, let's go back to the story and see how he really thinks and feels.
Are you sure you want to go through with this? Of course I was. It sounded horrible. It was scary, but it was worth a try. All I had to do was spend one day with Jeremy Ross, and then he'd be out of my hair for the rest of my life. I rode my bike to his house, and I knocked on the door.
And so we can always check in our predictions and our comprehension at this time. So if you feel like, oh, this is what I thought, then you know that you're understanding the story. Or if you want to change your thinking, you can always do that. Good readers always reflect and think about how their understanding and how the book is actually going makes sense.
When Jeremy opened the door, he seemed surprised. He stood at the other side of the screen door and he looked at me, waiting for me to say something. I was nervous. Can you play? I asked. And he looked confused. I'll go ask my mom, he said. And he came back with the shoes in his hand. His mom walked around the corner to say hello. You boys stay out of trouble, she said, smiling. We rode bikes for a while and played on the trampoline. Then we made some water balloons and threw them at the neighborhood girls. But we missed. Jeremy's mom made us lunch. And after lunch, we went over to my house. It was strange. I was kind of having fun with my enemy. He almost seemed nice. But of course, I couldn't tell my dad that since he'd been working so hard to make the enemy pie. Jeremy Ross liked my basketball hoop. He said he wished that he had a basketball hoop, but they didn't have room for one. I let him win a game, just to be nice. Jeremy Ross knew how to throw a boomerang. He threw it and it came right back to him. I threw it and it went over my house into the backyard. And when we climbed over the fence to find it, the first thing Jeremy noticed was my treehouse. My treehouse was my treehouse. I was the boss. If my sister wanted in, I didn't have to let her. If my dad wanted in, I didn't have to let him. And Jeremy Ross wanted in. Can we go in it? He asked. I knew he was going to ask me that. But he was the top person, the only person on my enemy list, and enemies aren't allowed in my treehouse. But he did teach me how to throw a boomerang, and he did have me over for lunch. Did let me play on his trampoline. He wasn't being a very good enemy.
I'm gonna pause right there and let's do a stop and jot. And let's think about how our main character changed in our story. So we might have a box that tells us how the boy felt then and how he feels now. So you might want to draw the same graphic organizer. I wish I could be neater, but it's really hard to draw on the computer. But teachers, when you're ready, you can let me know and I'll record your thinking. So the boy at first felt this, so this is then, and now. Miss Kim, you look ready. Would you like to share?
Before I think the boy was feeling upset and angry, because he was invited to his party, and so in some ways he didn't like Jeremy.
Mm-hmm.
But now, from where we stopped, I feel like he's feeling guilty and worried that he might have misjudged him.
And I love that you said he felt guilty because maybe he was like, oh, at first I thought of him as a bad person, but now I realize he wasn't at all. And so sometimes we might feel bad when we think something badly about someone when that might not be true.
Yeah.
Let's have one more share out. What else do you think? How did the boy change in the story? Mr. Kimowich?
I agree with Miss Kim. I think the boy was angry for not being included.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think he is having fun with his enemy. So he's changing his perception of his enemy, Jeremy.
Nice. And so that's the big change in the story. And boys and girls, when we read stories, when we notice that our characters change, that gives us a big hint about what the big idea of this story might be. So as we continue reading, you might have some ideas already about what's the big idea of the story. So let's keep going.
Okay, I said, but hold on. I climbed up ahead of him and I tore the enemy list off the wall. I had a checkerboard and some cards in the treehouse, and we played games until my dad called us down for dinner. We pretended we didn't hear him, but when he came out to get us, we tried to hide from him. But somehow he found us. Dad made us macaroni and cheese for dinner, my favorite. It was Jeremy's favorite too. Maybe Jeremy Ross wasn't so bad after all. I was beginning to think that maybe we should just forget about the enemy pie. But sure enough, after dinner, Dad brought out the pie, and I watched as he cut it into 8 thick slices. Dad, I said, it sure is nice to have a new friend in the neighborhood. I was trying to get his attention and trying to tell him that Jeremy Ross was no longer my enemy, but Dad only smiled and nodded. I think he thought I was just pretending. Dad dished up 3 plates side by side with big pieces of pie and giant scoops of ice cream.
Let's stop and act really quick. How do you think the boy is feeling right now with your facial expressions? What do you think he might be feeling? Like, kind of like scared at what's going to happen next? What are some other emotions?
Maybe nervous. He doesn't know what's going to happen, so he's nervous.
Any other thoughts? Ms. Rosales?
worried about what this would do to his newfound friendship.
Yeah. And I can imagine him if this was a movie. He's probably like shaking his legs, his whole body is shaking because he's so nervous about what's going to happen. So let's see how this plays out.
And he passed one to me and one to Jeremy. Wow, Jeremy said, looking at the pie. My dad never makes pie like this. It was at this point that I panicked. I didn't want Jeremy to eat enemy pie. He was my friend. I couldn't let him eat it. Jeremy, don't eat it. It's bad pie. I think it's poisonous or something. And Jeremy's fork stopped before reaching his mouth, and he crumpled his eyebrows, and he looked at me funny. I felt so relieved. I had saved his life. I was a hero. Well, if it's so bad, Jeremy asked, then why has your dad already eaten half of it? Well, I turned to look at my dad, and sure enough, he was eating enemy pie. Good stuff, he mumbled through a mouthful, and that was all he said. And I sat there watching him eating enemy pie for a few seconds. Dad was laughing, Jeremy was happily eating, and neither of them was losing any hair. It seemed safe enough. So I took a tiny taste. Enemy pie was delicious. After dessert, Jeremy rode his bike home, but not before inviting me over to play on his trampoline in the morning. He said he was going to teach me how to flip. As for enemy pie, I still don't know how to make it. I still wonder if enemies really do hate it, or if their hair falls out, or their breath turns bad. I don't know if I'll ever get an answer, because I just lost my best enemy.
The end. And so the last question we can do is stop and talk. What do you think was the solution to the boy's problem in this story? I'll give you some time to think. And just to clarify, the problem of the story was what was he going to do with his enemy, right? So what do you think, how did he solve that problem, and how is it shown in the story? So you can give me a thumbs up when you're ready to share your thoughts. Miss Akimowicz?
I think the boy solved the problem by spending time with his enemy and getting to know him a little bit more. And he realized that his enemy was fun and maybe funny, and he made a new friend through that time that he spent with him.
Yeah, he just needed to give him another chance and see him in different perspective. That's a good idea. Any other thoughts?
Just to add to that, they had some things in common. One of the things that was mentioned in the book was that the boys were going to eat mac and cheese, and both of them loved mac and cheese.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes even our enemies like the same things that we do. Miss Kim?
Yeah, I just agree with everyone. It's just, he decided to give him a chance, and, the secret is to become his friend instead of his enemy.
These are all really good thoughts, and I'm so excited to hear your thoughts. And some extension questions you can ask is, I'm also wondering what Dad was thinking this whole time in the story. Did he know this whole time? Maybe you have some thoughts about, we were just talking about the boy's thinking and his feelings, but I wonder what the dad was thinking and feeling throughout this whole story. So you can answer that question in the comments below. And also, as always, with every reading book, there's always something that we can apply to in our own lives. So what's a connection? What lesson can you learn from reading this story? So thank you so much for joining us, boys and girls, for our Read Aloud today. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.